All right, folks, here we are, another episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. I'm Mario Sikora here with my colleagues, friends, and co-hosts, TJ Dawe and TJ Ingrassia, and we are going to be talking about the movie Green Book. I keep wanting to say The Green Book, but it's just Green Book. And we are talking about the subtype of the Preserving Four. TJ Dawe, tell us about Green Book.
Yeah, so Green Book came out in 2018. It won Best Picture and it won Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali, who plays concert pianist Donald Shirley. This is a movie that's based on a true story. So Donald Shirley was a real guy. So in the movie, he hires Bronx tough guy and temporarily laid off Copacabana waiter Tony Lip, played by Viggo Mortensen, as his driver on an 8-week concert tour, most of which happens in the American South. This takes place in late 1962. So the two men have very clashing personality styles, but eventually they grow to respect each other as they go through the ups and downs of the road together, including numerous instances of racism against Dr. Shirley. And at the end of the tour, they make it back to New York just in time for Christmas Eve, and Shirley comes up to Tony's apartment to celebrate with him and his relatives. And the postscript of the movie says that the two men remain friends for the next 50 years until their deaths, which were only months apart.
Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, you had not seen this movie before. What was your reaction to it?
Okay, I really liked it. It was a fun watch.
Uh-huh.
Should this movie have won Best Picture in 2019?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But still a fun movie, especially for the topic that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. I would agree. I forget what else was in the contention.
I mean, they had Black Panther, Black Klansman. Either of those, if we're going in that direction, could have been good choices. Spike Lee, come on.
Yeah.
I really liked Vice from 2018. Adam McKay's, not everyone digs his flavor, but I like that film. Anyway, it didn't feel like an Oscar winner kind of movie. It felt like almost like a glorified Lifetime movie or something.
Yeah.
Which still, good performances, but
yeah. I would agree. I mean, good movie, enjoyable, a little bit maybe on the nose at some point, but what it is. It does seem like kind of one of those Oscar bait movies. It made me think of when Crash won, for example, and I don't know, didn't Sean Penn win for playing a mentally handicapped guy?
I Am Sam.
Yeah, I Am Sam.
He was nominated, but didn't win.
Nominated, okay, all right.
He won for Milk, I think.
Okay, right. So it just felt a little bit like that. But a good movie, an enjoyable movie, and absolutely a great portrayal of a Preserving Four. I mean, holy cow, if we're talking about unique preserving, need we say any more than when Tony walks into his apartment, on top of Carnegie Hall, right? I mean, holy cow. It's a great movie for that. And again, great performances. Heartbreaking, a good reminder, right, of, how the world was and sometimes, quite frankly, still is for a lot of people. So, I think that it's there always should be reminders of the problems of racism, et cetera. But, this was more than just racism. It was classism. This was, sexual identity, all sorts of things going on here. So, and as you think about it in more subtle ways than it might seem like at first. But enough of what I have to say. So, TJ Dawe, as our resident type 4, okay, what was fourish about this movie?
Well, just to build on what the both of you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was not fourish is the structure and style of the movie itself. It is very straightforward. Yeah. It's a heartwarming story based on a true story. And I looked it up, and much to my delight, they didn't change much. There's a lot of Hollywood films that are Oscar bait that are based on true stories where they take significant liberties with the truth. And when this came out, there was somewhat of a controversy because Donald Shirley's surviving relatives criticized it for its inaccuracies. But then it came out that it actually was incredibly accurate. And it seems like the only thing that they changed is something that, to me, isn't important, which is that The actual touring that the two men did together spanned 1.5 years and not 2 months.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
But they did start from the same place. Tony Lip was racist. They did grow to genuinely become friends and remain friends for the rest of their lives. Like, by and large, what the movie presents is accurate, as opposed to, say, Braveheart or The Imitation Game or Bohemian Rhapsody, where they changed really big things and then presented it as the truth.
I don't know if I've ever hated a movie as much as I hate Bohemian Rhapsody. I just watched it recently.
I have not seen that. I can't speak to it, and I can't imagine why I would watch it. Anyway.
And structurally,
go ahead.
Very straightforward. It's chronological. When a moment is sad or poignant, the music underscoring it is sad and poignant. There's nothing innovative about the presentation of this movie at all. And something it brought to mind is my partner and I. My partner is a preserving 4.
Right.
And one of the things she loves to do is cook. And when she cooks, she wants to make sure that the meals she makes are beautiful as well as delicious and nutritious. And a regular meal that we have, which amuses the both of us, it's probably the meal we have most often is, now, and I'm vegan, so I'll preface it with this. Vegan chicken strips, broccoli, and pearl couscous with barbecue sauce. And we laugh because when we look at our plates, it looks like a child's drawing of dinner. You've got the meat, you've got the green vegetable, you've got the grains, and it's delicious, and it feels good sitting in your stomach, and we're always happy to have it, and we have it very frequently. And that's what this movie is like. It's straightforward. It's vanilla. And you know what? The fact that vanilla is used to describe this, vanilla itself is delicious. And it's not to be taken for granted just because it's not special and unique. And I'm saying this is a 4. So this is very good for any 4 to remember, is sometimes just straight up, plain and simple does the trick. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And it is interesting that it's one of the rare movies to win Best Picture without even being nominated as Best Director. And, Peter Farrelly, one of the...
I got to the end of I didn't know anything about this movie other than seeing the poster. I get to the end of the movie, Peter Farrelly, the Dumb and Dumber guy? What?
There's Something About Mary? Shallow Hal?
Yeah.
Yep, that guy.
A great comedic director. I think Something About Mary is a fantastic movie. It would have been a good 7 pick, actually, with the Mary character. But anyway, not a director movie for sure. In that way, very, very kind of simple and straightforward. But let's get back to what was fourish about it, TJ.
So what was fourish is the character of Dr. Donald Shirley himself. So among other things, he's incredibly aristocratic. So 4s often have this sense of, I am part of a superior breed, whether they have a reason to believe that or not. Now, in this case, this is a guy with 3 PhDs. Yeah. He's a concert pianist. Yeah. They established in one of the intros to the concerts, he's got a PhD in music, another in
liturgical studies and psychology.
So, and he's a polyglot. Yeah. He's fluent in Russian, he's fluent in Italian, and perhaps other languages as well. And as you mentioned, he lives in an apartment above Carnegie Hall, and it's full, and he's got a manservant, and it's elaborately and tastefully decorated.
And literally has a throne.
And he sits on this raised platform, and he wears this flowing robe, a kaftan. I couldn't describe it necessarily, but he comes across as I am from a superior breed. He didn't grow up an aristocrat. He's from a not so rich family in Pensacola, but he just conducts himself, not only in that moment, but throughout the movie, like he is a consummate gentleman. He speaks well, he's polite, he's offended by rudeness and lowness, he's snobby, he's sophisticated. One of the early scenes that we see is when he's starting to leave for the tour. It's it's day 1, and he comes down from his apartment, and he allows the door to the rental car to be opened for him by his manservant. He sits in it, and then he sits there as he allows his manservant to drape a red blanket over his lap.
I can't tell you how much I want a manservant. Every time you say that word, all I think of is how cool would it be to have a manservant?
Well, if you had the sophistication and class of Donald Shirley, maybe... But probably not.
I'm only 3 PhDs away. So. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Part of the snobbishness is, kind of the shadow side of this, is that he often conducts himself with this air of, oh, the lot in life that I have that I must associate with such oafs.
Yes.
So as he's launching on the tour, Tony Lip tells him, like, my wife got interested in you and bought one of your albums. It's got a bunch of orphans on the cover, sitting around a campfire. And then he deciphers, oh, no, those aren't Orpheans. That's Orpheus in the underworld. It's based on a French opera, and those weren't children. Those were demons in the bowels of hell.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the troglodyte that I've attached myself to for the next 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Yeah, and what was interesting is that at the same time, he's so worldly in so many ways, but so separate from the world and unexposed to so many things, right? Had never heard Aretha Franklin before, Little Richard, all these sort of things. And Tony is introducing him to all this popular music. And even though Don Shirley is this virtuoso, he's listening to Little Richard and saying, that's pretty sophisticated. That's really good, and complimenting this. So he's recognizing it. And Tony is just baffled that he is not familiar with these guys, that he has never eaten Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example, despite all the stereotypes that keep, recurring throughout. That is a recurring theme. So there is this sort of this worldliness combined with this sheltering and this naivete, in a sense. And Tony, on the other hand, who is, ignorant of just about everything, but is very worldly in other ways, right? And so I thought that was a neat juxtaposition about how they were both so completely ignorant of each other's worlds, but both so knowledgeable in their own world, for what it's worth.
They establish off the top that Tony's racist against black people. Like in an early scene, there's two black workmen that come to his apartment to redo the floor, and his wife gives them glasses of lemonade. And then when they leave, he throws the glasses into the garbage can. He doesn't make a big show of it, but it's just quietly, privately, like, we don't want to touch those glasses anymore. And yet, he loves Little Richard. He loves Chubby Checker. So, like, there's these gaps in him. And you could criticize Viggo Mortensen as giving a one-dimensional portrayal of Tony Lip, except for the fact that Tony Lip's son was the co-writer of the screenplay and was on set, and that he absolutely helped him create this portrayal, and that Tony Lip, it turns out, has had an acting career and appeared in a number of episodes of The Sopranos. And Viggo Mortensen would have those on set and watch them and listen to his speech to reproduce it. Like, apparently he was really like that, but he comes across almost like a sketch comedy portrayal of like, I'm a big, dumb Italian tough guy. Hey!
Yeah. And there's the YMCA scene where Don Shirley gets arrested with the other man and expects to be really judged by Tony. And Tony's reaction to it is, look, I've been working in the nightclub industry for, 20 years, and I understand that life is complicated, right? So which one would not have expected, right? I mean, if we go back to The Sopranos, that's kind of cause to be executed, right? If they had been part of that gang. And so Tony, yes, he is racist, and again, at least when it came to gayness, he wasn't all that shocked, right, and didn't really care. So he didn't judge on that. So again, a little bit more nuanced than one might expect. Not a lot more nuanced, though, for sure.
Same with the racist cops. There's a number of scenes with racist cops in the South. And the comedian Roy Wood Jr. talked about how allies that never get their just due include actors who play racists in civil rights movies. Just let me give this one-dimensional portrayal as this embodiment of hatred and ignorance. And that's what those cops were like. Is like, I'm dumb, I'm racist, I'm hateful, I'm not going to cover it up. And yet, how inaccurate would that have been in 1962 in Mississippi?
I don't think it would have been all that inaccurate. So, agreed.
But all of that just really plays up what I was mentioning before, which is that sense, that forced sense of like, Here I am in a world populated by oafs. I'm the one person with intelligence and taste. There are other people, because he has 2 other musicians that are traveling with him, and he respects them and he speaks to them as equals. But by and large, here I have to lower myself to interact with all of these coarse fools. So that seemed really foolish to me.
Yeah.
Another part of how their relationship, Don Shirley and Tony Lip, develops is that Tony Lip's wife has asked him to write him letters from the road, like very regularly. And at first, Don Shirley observes him writing these ham-fisted letters that are full of like crossed out lines and things like that, then gets him to read him one, and is just aghast at how unsophisticated he is, and then starts dictating a letter in his stead and kind of becomes his muse and writes these sophisticated romantic letters to his wife, very much like Cyrano de Bergerac. And they absolutely work. There's these scenes where his wife is reading them aloud to her friends, and they're all swooning, and she has tears in her eyes, and the other women want their husbands to write them romantic letters like that. But there's this sense of like, this is what I can do. This is what I have to offer, is this ability to help someone express themselves uniquely and beautifully. Yeah. Because I'm an artful person, and I have art in my soul, and I want the world to be like that.
He even tells him when writing the letter, he says, do it in a way that no one has ever done it before, which is, again, about as foolish as you can get. And you can see him really experiencing the longing, right? It's almost like he's writing, love poetry to some imagined lover himself or some past lover, right? I mean, it's almost, like Tony's not even part of that anymore, but he is playing this out in a way.
And then, of course, the last line of the film, we get the reveal that, Tony's wife thanks Don for helping him to write the letter. So, she knew what was going on, but she's still appreciative.
Yeah. And then he laughs when he hears it from her. It's like, okay, I guess it wasn't a big secret that this big caveman was speaking like this.
All right. So anything else foolish? TJ Ingrassia, did you see anything foolish that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, so you mentioned his apartment at the beginning. I was trying to think of what's a good description of that apartment. And then, of course, I turned to our old standard
there we go.
instinctual leadership. So this description of the preserving four, okay, they want their surroundings to reflect what they see as their nature. Unusual but refined. Noticeable but not flashy, comfortable but tasteful. And that's almost a perfect description of that apartment. Yeah. So that was really good.
I don't. What was the second phrase there?
Let's see. Noticeable but not flashy.
Yeah, certainly noticeable. I'm not quite sure that it wasn't quite flashy, but I'll take it. All right, I'll take it.
Yeah. We'll give you 5 out of 6.
And go ahead. Yeah. Go on.
And so there one scene that I really like that I think and you guys can tell me what you think about this. When they first arrive in Pittsburgh, and they're at the scene of the hotel. So Tony goes out on the balcony to smoke a cigarette, and he looks down. Down by the pool is the 2 band members, and they're talking and laughing and drinking with these 2 pretty ladies. And then the camera pans up, and we see Don sitting alone on his balcony, drinking his whiskey, sort of gazing longingly down on the group. And so it felt like a pretty good representation, both metaphorically and literally, that the 4 can be see themselves as being above everyone, as you guys have described already. But this sense of like, I wish I could connect with the unwashed masses in some way. There's something missing from me that they have that I wish I had, but I'm also up here and better than them, and the contradiction there. So how does that feel right?
Yeah, well, obviously we want to hear what TJ Dawe has to say on it, but I'll comment first. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with the 4, right? It's this longing. It's this longing for connection, that connection to point 2, the strategy there. But this, it's an arrogance that is, and I'll call it an arrogance for our sakes here. It's this I am better than, coming from a place of I'm not really better than. I'm flawed. I'm wounded. I'm sad. I'm hurt. I, would love to have somebody take care of me and love me and treat me as an equal and protect me, but then I wouldn't be special anymore. And so I have to maintain this longing and this melancholy to feel special, but then this longing and melancholy becomes the torture that so closely identifies me. So, TJ?
I'd say I agree with all of that, and it's part of a bigger theme that I see in the movie, and very relevant to Type 4s, is that there's a lot of alienation, there's a lot of distance. So one of the conversations, it's an argument that Tony and Don Shirley have, is Tony claims that he's blacker than Don Shirley.
Right.
And of course Don Shirley doesn't accept this, but like they get it back and forth, and then ultimately it comes down to him saying that he's not really accepted in any world. He will never be accepted among true sophisticates because he's black, but he won't be accepted among black people because he's too fancy.
Exemplified by that very nuanced and subtle scene where the car breaks down across the road from the sharecroppers, right? And and he's standing there, and all of his odds? And all of his elegant refinery. Why there are these people working in the fields, and they're staring at each other or they're staring at him as if he's an alien. Right. And it's interesting that the way he's looking at them, right, that it's almost like they're not even really registering, in a way. They're just so other to him. I thought. So anyway, so to your point, this movie is all about identity and not fitting in, wanting to fit in, but also recognizing that when we do fit in, we kind of lose, something at the same time.
Well, that can be the big fear, as you said, that if I connect with other people, then I lose my uniqueness, which actually isn't true.
Right.
And that sets up the ending of the movie because, well, before we get to that, one of the plot points that's mentioned, just part of Don Shirley's private life, is that he's estranged from his brother.
Yeah.
So at one point, Tony encourages him to write his brother a letter, and he says he knows where I am if he ever wants to reconnect. So it's this very much thing of like, no, you reach out to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pretend I don't want that, but of course I definitely do. And then when they get back to New York City, they do like an all-day, all-night drive to get there on Christmas Eve so that Tony can be there for Christmas Eve with his family. He invites him up, and he politely turns him down. He goes back to his apartment, his beautiful, tasteful apartment. He gives his manservant the night off, and then he just stands there alone. And then suddenly he shows up at the Bronx, and he's there at Tony Lip's house, or his apartment, and he's welcomed in. And initially there's like this tension of like, wait a minute, a black guy, get this man a chair, get him a plate, hey, make some room, yeah, come on. Everybody's happy to see him, and he's happy to be there. And it's this contradiction that a lot of fours experience is, I do want to be invited. I do want to be loved. I do want to be a part of things, but I don't want to give up my uniqueness. I don't want to be just the same as everybody else, but I desperately want to be loved, and I could never admit that, because that is so gauche to even put into words, even in my thoughts, much less to verbalize to another person, much less to do.
Yeah. A couple of other things that I caught. So the about what is fourish, right? Again, there are these assumptions, I think, that we all tend to make about people, and part of establishing our own identity is identifying and getting rid of the stereotypes or the assumptions about people in these ways in which I am not different. The fried chicken scene, the Kentucky Fried Chicken scene, is coming to mind for me, right? Because again, there's this expectation, black guy, you're going to love fried chicken, etc. And there's even that scene at one of the stops where they ask the help what to make, and they bring out the chicken. And but watching Don Shirley eat that chicken, or try to eat that chicken, and his overcoming the revulsion at first, and then the delicacy to which he's approaching it, and then the glee he takes at throwing the bones out the window, right? You see this kind of transformation and this discovery of something about himself, right? Which again, I think is great, because it's one of those moments where the big challenge of the 4 is they can fall into manufactured uniqueness, and it separates them from who they really are in a way. And in this attempt to find out who they really are, they actually get further away from it. And for me, this represented one of those moments where, I'm not the kind of person who would eat Kentucky Fried Chicken in the back seat of a car driving through, Kentucky. Imagine that.
I've never had fried chicken in my life. Right. He says it with such disdain.
Right.
It's not an uncommon dish.
But sure.
Like, it's not specialized, stereotypically black people like fried chicken, but like I had fried chicken growing up. Like, it's the most common meal in America.
Right. No, absolutely. And and I think from my point, there was this element of him finding out something about himself in that eating of the fried chicken. That, number one, hey, I like this, right? This is pretty good. And number two, there's a part of me that loves the idea of just throwing the bone out the window, right? And that sort of thing.
But not the soda cup.
Not the soda cup. No, we're going back for that. We're not animals here, right? So, all right. Okay, anything else foolish before we move on to what's preserving?
Yeah, one big thing that stood out for me is this inability to appreciate the life that he has. So, on the surface, you would think Dr. Don Shirley has a life that any 4 would envy. He makes music in his own way. He's got this beautiful apartment. He's got this incredible life. He doesn't have a day job. He's sophisticated. He lives his life the way he wants. And there's a scene where he's grousing that he trained to be a classical pianist, and the record company steered him in the direction of making more popular music. Now, he's not playing the Camptown Races. He's not playing simple music. Yeah. He's not playing pop. Like, when you, in the scenes, the performance scenes, it's still interesting.
It's hard to classify, really, the music, right? It's not quite jazz. It's not quite classical. It's not quite pop. It's not Bobby Rydell, with the Copa, for example. So
it's unique.
Yes.
And yet, his inner critic can still say, you're not playing Chopin.
Yeah.
You're not playing Beethoven. Yeah. You're not doing it. You don't get to live the life that you really wanted, what you were really put here to do. You're reduced to doing this, to cater to the tastes of the popular audience. This is beneath you, and this is the best you're going to have. So let's just take away whatever joy you might feel. And that is a brutal aspect of being a 4. And I say this as somebody who still experiences this, but has experienced this many times in the past. This is part of what made the Enneagram land so much for me, is my tendency to do that, is just for some part of me to want to take away the joy, the inability to even see what I had, and to say it's mediocre, it doesn't count, or it's not good enough, because it could be better.
So let's move on to the instinctual bias here. And so it was a preserving bias. And I have to say that watching this movie, it was really a struggle for me to pull out what was for, what was preserving, and not just see everything as preserving for, right? I mean, it was almost a pitch perfect preserving for movie. And I think a movie that a lot of people could have a character that some people might have misidentified as a 1 in some situations, right? So, which really, illustrates that 1-4 connection in an interesting way. This rigidity, particularly for the preserving 4 around their environment, and this, focus on specificity and perfection of the environment. But don't you think about putting rules on me, because I play by my own rules. Okay, so there's that piece, part of it. But what was preserving for you guys about this movie?
I had the same experience. So just a couple of things. My notes on preserving on its own are very, very few. But he frequently tells Tony as he's driving, 10 and 2 on the wheel, please.
Right.
Focus on safety.
Right.
Tony's a lot more just fast and loose. He'll drive with one hand. He'll turn around as he talks to him. He'll regale him. He'll make jokes. He'll not keep his eye on the road. And Don is sitting in the back, is always like, eyes on the road, 10 and 2 on the wheel. I don't like this. Asks him to put out his cigarette. Why? I can't breathe back here. I'm a little curious as to how accurate that is, because in 1962, I get I wasn't alive then, but I get the experience from movies that a lot of people smoked, like people were smoking in doctors' offices.
I grew up in the era of smoking in cars and smoking on airplanes and all these other sort of things. So, yeah.
Just get the non-smoking seat on the airplane and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I flew to Poland in 1980 on an airplane where people were smoking. It was an 11-hour trip. It was, oh my God. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, so so go ahead, TJ.
One last thing is, at one point he gives Tony cash for incidentals, tells him to keep the receipts. There's more if you need it. So that attention to finances and personal needs and just the operation of how a tour needs to run with, expense tracking and things like that, needing to get receipts, that's very preserving.
Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, anything you saw as preserving?
I thought his the scotch. He wants a very specific bottle of scotch in his room every night.
Cuddy Sark.
He wants it the way he wants it. And then just everything you guys have said. Just the way his. It's so hard to pull out from the four. Just his manner of dress, the way he comports himself. It's very preserving and very four.
Yeah. You mentioned the blanket, for example, the blanket over his lap, and let's see.
And even just having a manservant feels like could be a sort of a preserving, I'm going to make sure this guy's going to take care of my needs. No one else's, my needs.
My preserving needs specifically.
Yes. So let's get to the preserving four part, because again, these two things were blended so well here. And one of the things we see with the preserving four is this focus on the uniqueness and elegance and refinement of my environment. And my environment often includes the way that I dress. And it's usually not it's not hugely flamboyant with lots of it's not Prince, for example. Okay, it's not Little Richard. Although Don Shirley, some of those, outfits were pretty, loud, but there was just, and the apartment itself, it had tusks, it had a seat up on a dais, it had all of these things that were quite dramatic, but it didn't, to me at least, seem tacky and loud and, bright and transmitting. Right? There was this museum-like quality to it, in a way. And this is what we see in the preserving four, right? They often like textures. They often like colors and interesting color combinations. And I had a client one time years ago who was a preserving four, and he drove a purple Porsche, which took him years to find, right? Because it had to be purple. And he told me that in his house he had burgundy leather wallpaper in the living room, which, to me, I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. But he said that people always said it was beautiful and it was different, unique. Right? So go ahead, guys. What else preserving for about the character?
Well, kind of taking the baton from what you just said, something that's not very preserving about this movie and about this character is that this is a movie that most of it takes place with him out of his nest. So preservers in general, and particularly preserving fours, like to be in this beautiful environment that they've carefully crafted. This is where I feel good. This is where I feel at home. So to spend time on the road where you don't know how beautiful is my environment going to be. And as a black man in the 60s, and the whole title refers to this guidebook that's given so that black travelers know which hotels will allow them to stay there, which restaurants will allow them to dine there. Sometimes he's staying in really grubby motels. And you see that difference. Now, that would bother a lot of preservers, whether they're fours or not. So the fact that this guy spends a lot of time on the road is atypical for preservers. It's not out of the question. But what might be more stereotypical would be is if a preserving four musician was a studio musician or played in an orchestra and was allowed to, particularly if that orchestra plays in Carnegie Hall and he just has to go downstairs and then come back upstairs after the show. So we see him taken out of his nest a lot. And there's a scene when he's staying at a motel, I think in Louisville, and it's for black people, and he's sitting outside just in the courtyard, and some guys are playing horseshoes, and they need another man. They ask him to play, and he turns them down. Then he goes to a bar where a bunch of racist white guys beat the shit out of him. And that seemed really interesting to me, is like it wasn't acceptable to him just to stay in his room with his bottle of the exact kind of scotch that he likes, Cutty Sark. It's his alone, but he needed to go out and have a drink at a nice place. That seemed really preserving for to me, is I want my special treat, and I want it the way I want it. I want to be in a beautiful environment. So to stay in this grubby motel where I've just been alienated, not acceptable to me, even though it literally puts him in danger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I saw that scene when he was getting away from the guys wanting him to play horseshoes, because the place he ended up in wasn't exactly beautiful, where the racist guys beat him up. It seemed to me that he just needed to get away from this kind of mundane, what he saw as a mundane environment, right? Of, playing horseshoes. What, are you kidding me? Right? That is not something I would think to do. The other thing that really grabbed me, you mentioned some of the conditions of some of the hotels that they stayed in. And there's the one where he's sharing a room with Tony, and Tony's laying on the bed and his wife beat her or something. But even then, Don Shirley is dressed immaculately, right? I mean, he's in this awful, dingy hotel room, and you can just imagine the cockroaches on the floor, but he looks like he just stepped out of a magazine, right? And that was still that, I will control my environment. I will not allow it to control me.
I will bring beauty to this unbeautiful environment.
Yes.
And that will sustain me until I can get to a place that is beautiful.
Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, any preserving for things you saw?
I think the line when he's talking about, I forget exactly, I think he's talking to Tony. He's explaining why he's doing this. Why leave his nest and go on this tour in this hostile environment? And he says, genius is not enough. It takes courage to win people's hearts. And so it's kind of this idea that he's going into this hostile territory, in a sense, to try to change people's minds, or to expose them to someone like him, to show them a different way. And I think maybe it takes, would you say it wouldn't take as much courage for a transmitter to do that? I don't think. I think that's almost kind of the point of the movie, is that it's this fish out of water. He's mustering the courage to leave his nests, to leave his preserving domain, and to go into these places where he's not comfortable. That's the courage that he's manifesting. So I don't know. Is that overplayed, or you think that that's right?
I agree. The stakes are higher, as you said, than they would be for a transmitter who would just need to get out there no matter what. And I think there's also some of the connection to one, because another way to phrase what you described is missionary work. Yeah. I'm going out and spreading the light of my own intelligence, my own sophistication, my own artistry, and letting these ignorant oafs know that black people have this going on. We aren't just the sharecroppers you see in the field.
Yeah, and it's in a understated and indirect way, right? So transmitters, we've talked before about how it's the transmitters that are the world changers and the big statement makers, and that's not him, right? He doesn't lecture, other than Tony. He really doesn't pontificate from the stage or deliver these messages to people, and it's very hard for him to stand up. For example, when they won't let him eat in the restaurant, and he decides he's not going to play. That was a real act of courage. That was not, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a statement and be heard, sort of thing. So it is a much more restrained way of making a difference, and I think it's one of the other things that draws a distinction between a preserving for and a transmitting for example, who would be much more willing to say, no, you know what, I have an opinion about things, and here's how things should be, and you should listen to me because I'm awesome and special and deserve to be listened to, right?
And I've got a platform. I'm on stage in a concert hall with a microphone, and even though he's not a singer, even though he's playing instrumental music, you can intro a song, you can extra a song, you address the audience. It's a very normal thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, at the end of every show, he finishes the last note, he smiles and nods, and that's it. He doesn't say anything.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So I want to talk about Tony for a moment, and so I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest transmitting 8 for this character.
You're not going to pull a True Grit and say he's actually a 9?
No, I'm not.
I think this man is much nearer and dearer to your heart, perhaps. Than...
That's me if I'd have been a transmitter. That's for sure. So. With a, shall we say, a love of excess, particularly around food, right? One of the first things the first thing we find out about him is that he has a angry streak where he beats up a patron in the Copa. The second thing we find out about him is that he is a prodigious eater of hot dogs and other foodstuffs. He wins a hot dog eating contest by eating 26 hot dogs. Throughout, we see him downing huge amounts of food, and he lives with gusto, we should say, right? So some people might look at this emphasis on food and this emphasis on excess and things and think preserving, right, in this case. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this is particularly a transmitting 8 approach to preserving. Right, it is this we call a zone of inner conflict. Tony's not good with money. Okay, he can go out and he can make it, but he's pretty darn good at spending it. He's a good gambler and brags about never losing, but he blows it as soon as he gets it and that sort of thing. And this is what we see in a lot of transmitters, particularly transmitting 8s. So a very different look at the preserving instinctual bias through these two different characters. Thoughts on that?
And even his physicality, not that there can't be overweight preservers necessarily, but a preserver might be a little more conscious of, maybe I need to preserve myself.
Right.
Tony's he's downing fried chicken, he's almost got it in 2 hands at the same time.
He's eating a whole pizza by just folding it over and eating.
Which is a real thing the real guy did. His son emphasized that. And
who amongst us hasn't folded an entire pizza in half and just gone for it?
Don't worry about slicing that. I got it. We're good.
He eats a pizza, like an entire pizza, like it's a taco. And Peter Farrelly, I read, was hesitant to put that in because he was a comedy director and he didn't want to make the movie seem like he's veering back into Dumb and Dumber territory. But it's like, well, the real guy did do that. And then he just liked the way it looked. So, okay, let's put that in.
All right. Okay.
And
so
one more thing about him is that there's also this huge tenderness to him. So in these early scenes, well, first of all, his fighting style very much reminds me of the way you described Bane when we did the episode about The Dark Knight Rises, transmitting 8, and that his fighting style is none. It's just straight up blows to the face. That's what he does. Right. There's no subtlety.
No bobbing and weaving here.
Yeah. Totally. He hasn't learned martial arts. He just holds up a big meaty fist and pounds you in the face with it repeatedly. The next scene, when he goes to when he goes home that very night, he checks on both of his sons who sleep in bunk beds in the bedroom he shares with his wife and tenderly kisses them each. And then tenderly gets into bed with his wife. And the next day, when he shows up for the hot dog eating contest, he's holding one of his sons in his arm. Yeah. So it's easy to portray 8s and particularly transmitting 8s as just a brute. But there's that aspect too of there's that tenderness in him. And as you've talked about with 8s, if I'm going to take you under my wing, okay, this is a real thing. So I'm not going to do this lightly. And that's the journey we see him go on over the course of this movie with Dr. Don Shirley. Is after he gets beat up in that bar, he says to him, "Don't you ever go anywhere without me ever again." And he means it. And it's not just because otherwise I don't get paid.
Yeah, and there's the scene in the hotel in Memphis where those two other guys try to get him to go and work with them and say, well, pay you a lot more money and all that sort of stuff. And Don Shirley thinks he's going to leave him, and he offers him a promotion and more money and all that. And he says, no, stop, I'm not going anywhere. I made a commitment to you. I'm going to see this out, and I'm going to see it out at the price that I told you, which again is, speaks to that kind of, a code of honor that eights often have, even when other areas of their life can seem pretty, dishonorable, right? The gambling, the, priding himself on being the world's best bullshitter and that sort of thing, but I got a code, right? So
yeah, and at the end of the film, it was a little ambiguous. I guess it's mostly just implied, but there's sort of this theme running through the whole film of, are they going to make it to the last performance, and is he going to get paid? Because if anything goes wrong, you don't get the second half of your payment.
Right.
We come to the final performance. They won't let him eat in the restaurant. Tony supports him and in some ways encourages him to not, let's get out of here because they're not treating you properly. And him going along with that and being supportive, he doesn't say, hey, if you don't do this, I'm not going to get paid, so we're going to stay and do this.
Right.
He's willing to forego, presumably, the second half of his payment to do the right thing.
Yeah. They really didn't address that in the movie that I recall. I don't think they addressed whether he got paid or not, or, whether that violated it. Unless I missed something.
No, yeah, I feel like they should have been a little more explicit about that, but it seems like based on the way they were setting it up through the film, presumably he doesn't get paid because he didn't do the performance.
Right.
And as you said, it came down
it's
to
not totally clear.
It came down to Tony's choice, because I noted that. I watched the movie twice, so the second time I was paying close attention, and Don was ready to do it and says, what do you think, Tony? And he says, let's get the fuck out of here. So it's very much like, I'm with you.
Yeah. That's another great eight-ish quality, this willingness to bite off your nose to spite your face. So all right, let's see. I'm going to look at my notes here and see if I have anything else that was preserving for us. We talked about The Office, again, just unique preserving. Boom, we can stop the movie here, kind of thing. There was the him mocking Tony, telling him he should be a food critic when he asked him about the food, and he said it was salty, and you should be a food critic, and you're so good with words, and all these sort of things. And again, it was this haughtiness of the four combined with this. I don't know, just that it just struck me as hugely preserving for. We talked about Orphans versus Orpheus. The hotel scene, the one in Pittsburgh. I actually stayed at that hotel years ago with my family. So, oddly enough, I forget the name of it, but it's a beautiful hotel. It did kind of establish that. I think a part of the Cutty Sark thing is I'm creating my home away from home. Right, this is the thing that this establishes. I want this every night, a whole bottle of Cutty Sark, which is a lot of whiskey to drink every night, right? I mean, that it takes a real man to do that. And there's this, this kind of hovering hovering over and distance at the same time. So it's this kind of cocoon creation, my own little world, and it's almost like these people are, in a way, amusement for me, right? It's my entertainment for the night to watch these people. It's this thing that makes me feel connected but not connected, part of but separate, etc. Again, all preserving for stuff. So, and there was a huge one-ish quality. Again, we see this in preserving fours, see it in all fours, but in different ways. You particularly see it in the personal comportment and the environment of the preserving four.
Yeah, he criticizes Tony's diction and tries to get him to do vocal exercise, enunciation exercises. It's like, good luck with that.
People like the way I talk.
And if they don't, they can go take a shit.
Any other assessments of any other characters? Did any type stand out? Not really many other characters other than the manservant, that, and the wife, I guess, and a few of the other characters. I don't know. Any thoughts on other characters?
Dolores, the wife, played by Linda Cardellini, 2 is my best guess for her. Is she's
Seemed it.
and that is very much in line with the cultural stereotypes of the time and of Italian Americans. Is, you know, the stay-at-home mom who cooks, who takes care of the house, who's friendly. You know, she gets lemonade for the black workers who are doing the reflooring. She's ready to get mad at Tony for losing $50 in the hot dog eating contest until it turns out that he won. You know, so we see some of the steel in a tube beneath the soft, loving surface. She is upset that he's going to be away for 2 months. She turns and pouts when Dawn calls her in this very genteel way to make sure that it's okay with her. She asks if he packed the maps as he's leaving town, if he brought an iron. She insists that he write her letters. She protests.
She packed them sandwiches.
Yeah, so very much like preserving too, of like, I want to make sure your preserving needs are going to be taken care of. Yeah. That's my job.
Preserving 2 is the next best thing to a manservant, by the way. So just
if you can get a preserving 2 manservant, then you're really in business.
I'm just joking. Preserving 2's out there. There's this view in the podcast, the listener world, that I don't like 2s, and I that's not the case at all. So,
she also says to him, "You better be home for Christmas, or don't come home at all." She's not really threatening divorce, but she also means it.
There's going to be a price to pay, you can tell.
Yeah.
All right, good. So what if this character had been played, let's start with a transmitting 4. How would it have been different, TJ Dawe?
You know, he definitely would have dressed more flamboyantly. His stage costume was a tuxedo.
Yeah, yes.
So I can imagine him dressing a lot more like Little Richard or James Brown. Just like big, impossible to miss, which also might have wreaked havoc in his time off stage, because even if he wasn't dressing in a full-on stage costume off stage, he still would have been a transmitter, and he still would have been impossible to miss and ruffled even more feathers of racists in the South.
Yeah.
Also, maybe his unwinding wouldn't have been quite so contained. You know, one bottle of Cutty Sark that he has by himself, or that one incident where he has a dalliance with a man in the steam room of a YMCA. There might have been a lot more connections on the road. There might have been more partying than that, just one bottle of whiskey a night.
Don Shirley had this tremendous emotional restraint, right? This incredible self-control that I don't think would have been the case with a transmitting 4 for sure.
Yeah, more lashing out.
Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, any thoughts on what it would have looked like with a navigating 4 in the character?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, the primary way that he relates, there's so many instances in the film where he's the victim of some racist cop, or a racist waiter, or a racist, fill in the blank. And there's moments where he's almost surprised or taken aback by it. I wonder if a navigator, I don't know, would have had not a better understanding of those situations, but I mean, certainly would have, I don't know, just navigated those differently. But I don't know that I can put my finger exactly on. Help me out here. Is there anything to that?
Well, no, I think you're onto something, right? There would be a bit more. Look, I think Don Shirley knew what he was getting into going into the South. I don't think it wasn't his first time doing that, so I think he got it. But I also think that there was a rigidity in that there's only certain compromises I'm willing to make and others I won't, and I understand there might be some consequences for that. I think a navigating 4 might have been a little bit more flexible in that sense. I also think a navigating 4 would have thrown all of his stuff into a backpack and a small gym bag and been happily, wandering, the earth like Cain in the Kung Fu, just experiencing things and enjoying things. So I don't think there would have been the same, no, for this place, just bring the small suitcase, kind of deliberation and planning involved. All right. Let's see here. We've talked about other characters. We talked about the other subtypes. What other preserving 4s do we have on our list? TJ Dawe, what have you got?
There's a few that we've talked about in different episodes. So there's Rick Masters, the Willem Dafoe character in To Live and Die in L.A. There's Sam and Susie, the 2 young people in Moonrise Kingdom. There's Laszlo Cravensworth on What We Do in the Shadows, and Uncle Monty in With Nail and I. So if anybody's interested in any of those characters, we have episodes on each of those. Yeah. Some of the ones that I believe are preserving for is that we have not talked about in other episodes. Blanche Dubois, played by Vivian Leigh in A Streetcar Named Desire. Paul Finch in American Pie, who even as a teenager is sophisticated enough to want a cappuccino. Virginia Woolf, played by Nicole Kidman in The Hours. Jackie Kennedy, played by Natalie Portman in Jackie. Manny Delgado on Modern Family. And Karen Von Blixen, played by Meryl Streep in Out of Africa. Miles Raymond, played by Paul Giamatti in Sideways. A real wine snob, this guy, for his bachelor... he wants to accompany his friend on a bachelor week by going wine tasting in Napa.
I love that movie.
Oh, what a great movie. And finally, Paul Benjamin, played by William Hurt in Smoke. He loves his cigars and has his apartment in Brooklyn where he lives as a novelist, writes and lives his own way.
I've seen about 3 of those movies, so, so which says a lot about me. Anyway, TJ Ingrassia, would you add anything to it?
I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. All right. Great. Just another quick note on Sideways. That was filmed at the at Fess Parker's winery in Napa Valley. And Fess Parker, in case you don't know, this is TV and movie relevant. Okay, he played Daniel Boone in the TV show.
Oh, I thought he was Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett in the Disney movie anyway.
Yeah. Now I'm drawing up. No, it was there was somebody else that played Daniel Boone. I'm sorry. Yes, so it was Davy Crockett, and he took that money. I'm going to have to double check that because I think he might have played Daniel Boone in the TV show, but we'll fact check that. He took his money from that TV show and he bought that winery and he bought a hotel on the beach in Santa Barbara back before Santa Barbara was a big thing. And it became a really big thing. It's beautiful and the hotel was huge and gorgeous. And I stayed there with my wife, some years back when it was still owned by his descendants. He was dead by this point, but there was this big bar in the lobby, and above the bar there was this wall space that was about 20 feet by 20 feet, and they would play clips of his movies and TV shows dressed up as Daniel Boone and or Davy Crockett in those. It was quite a delightful thing. So they don't do it anymore. The hotel got sold, but it was a nice piece of movie and TV trivia.
And was this before Sideways or after that you stayed there?
That's a good question. So I didn't stay at the winery that they stayed at. I stayed at the hotel, gotcha. A little further away. But but I don't know if it was before or after.
Well, a great movie and visually sumptuous.
Agreed. I did see that. Yeah, I did see that one. That and With Nail and I and 1 or 2 of the others. Anyway, so, go ahead, TJ.
What about Gwyneth Paltrow's Margot Tenenbaum and the Royal Tenenbaum? Do you think she'd be a preserving for? Have you seen the Royal Tenenbaums, Mario?
Oh, of course, man, like 20 times.
Okay.
Are you kidding me?
So that's another one.
Yeah, we did a Wes Anderson episode. We talked about her specifically.
Yeah.
You think Margot's preserving for?
I'm back and forth between preserving and navigating. I'd have to give that some thought. I don't know, TJ Dawe, thoughts on that?
I think there's a strong argument for transmitting as well. She's
transmitting. Oh, interesting.
Just that eyeshadow that eyeliner that she wears is very much like transmitting. Like, look at how sad I am.
And and being a playwright and that sort of thing. Yeah, it could be.
Same with her prosthetic finger. It's like, hey, everybody, look at me. Look at how wounded I am.
Yeah. I always think whenever I think of her character in that, I think of Nico and her cover version of These Days. And Nico was probably a transmitting for also. So, yeah, good question. I don't have an answer right away. So, all right. Okay, guys, anything else about this movie that we have not discussed that we need to wrap up here before we finish this nonsense?
One just minor moment in the movie that seemed really preserving for to me is when he's denied the use of the bathroom in one of the venues, and they tell him to go to the outhouse. And thinking that he's calling the guy's bluff, he offers that he could be taken back to his motel and use the bathroom there, even though it'll take half an hour. And the guy says, that sounds good, we'll wait. And he does it. And Tony Lip is saying, we could just stop right here. You can piss in the woods. Animals use the woods.
Yes.
Will not do that.
Yes. All right. So, on the movie, listener, if you have not watched it, I think it's worth a watch. I think it's an interesting character study for sure. I think that there are few things that more vividly display the preserving for subtype. There's a lot of argument out there over what a true four is and what a true four isn't. And I think one of those reasons is because people don't really understand the different instinctual biases and how they interact with the types. But this, my friends, is a preserving four on steroids. So great movie to start with. And with that, we'll wrap this up. And you know what, folks, before we wrap up, and I should have said this sooner, this podcast is part of the broader Awareness to Action podcast network, which has just added a third podcast to the stable. Shameless plug. That's absolutely right. I'm going in my transmitting mode here. So we already have the Enneagram in a Movie podcast that many of our listeners also listen to. But we just started a podcast called Thinking Well and Why, which is all about clear thinking skills and the Enneagram and work on self in general. So check us out there, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time. So long.